Hello, in this video I'm going to cover subclassing kind of in a broad topic here, but how you should look at accommodating your team in trial groups with now that subclassing is live in the game. And I think this is something that a lot of people kind of struggle with adjusting how they view this game and what has changed in this. So I'm going to go over it in some detail here and what I look at and what I can configure in terms of now that we have subclassing live, how group content has changed for trials. So let's just get into it right here. I am on my traditional, whatever you want to call this, the meta build, which is the Assassin, Adric Spear, and Herald of the Tome. Now, what happens when you do this is you lose out on the other Arcanist skill lines, the Soldier of Apocrypha, and the Curative Rune forms. Now, why is that important to look at? Well, the Arcanist skill line, when it first came out, was utilizing uh, this passive here specifically in order to sustain. This gave you 18% recoveries, increased recoveries, okay? And so why is that important? Well, if you look at the cost of these skills, they're not cheap. The flail is extremely expensive, especially when you consider you have to flail 3 times now, or at least 2, because hopefully your inspired scholarship is going to give you a crux, and then you'll get 2 from the flails. So that's 5,000 stamina right there. Plus, they increased the cost of the beam, and then whatever other stamina skills you're using. So now you don't have a recoveries if you build like this. There are some things here with the assassin skill line. Let me back out of that so that I can look at these that I'm currently wearing. There is this: when an enemy is damaged and they die, then you get 1,000. This isn't going to proc that much as often, I should say, in boss fights. You'll still get ads that come into the fights, but it doesn't happen as often in boss fights. Um, all these other stats are pretty much critical chance increases, which are great. Increase to damage is awesome. That's one of the most powerful things about subclassing. But the Adric Spear line has pretty much only damage increases. If you look at Herald of the Tome, they're only damage increases. There's no recoveries here. So what your DPS are going to lose. So let's just put it in this perspective. You're going to parse on this dummy and hit well over 100,000 DPS, right? Okay, so let's look and see what we have to have here in a trials group in order to sustain that 100,000+ DPS. We've got to make sure we're taking care of penetration all the way and critical damage at 125% as much as possible. Now, I have done videos on this in the past. Please go check out my YouTube channel for that. I believe both those videos are in my trials folder. That's probably a good place to look, since this is probably going to go in that as well. I should call it a playlist rather. I keep calling them folders, and that's probably confusing people. They are created playlists that I have created on my channel. I organize all my videos that I do on the playlist. So if you're only interested in healing stuff, I have a healer folder with all of my healer stuff on there, just to clarify that. So back into this, we also need to make sure that we have minor vulnerability, major vulnerability in place at all times. And then if I hit the dummy, then I can look at the buffs that it gives. So I'm also going to need to focus on minor Berserk being in the build. I need to get this major courage from SPC healer. Major Slayer, I don't recommend running Rojo anymore. I've covered that in several videos now. You can probably find it in one of the videos I've done. So I'm not going to cover that extensively. I recommend having a support DPS run War Machine to keep this uptime much higher. But those are the main things that you need to bring to your trials team, which are easily done. But what else do we need to do? Okay, so we don't have recoveries here that we used to. Now I'm currently running on this character. I have Lava Foot Soup, which is going to give me a ton of stamina recovery with quite a bit of max stamina. Now I'm going to wait for these to drop off so that I can go into my character screen and get an accurate depiction of what I'm going to have on here with my weapon power pot. But essentially, the other thing we lose from not having Soldier of Apocrypha is if we were to run a Soldier of Apocrypha ability such as Rune of the Colorless Pool or something like that, that would give us resistances. So the other thing that we're missing here are resistances. So if you look at how I've built my trials team, I did this for a very specific reason. It's not just throwing things against the wall and seeing if they stick. That I'm trying to compensate for what we lost in the subclassing flip on these builds. We gained a shit ton of damage, but we lost recoveries. As you can see now, I only have 1,286. If I pop my potion here, then I've got 1,597, which is decent. But if you're not going to get recoveries from a healer wearing the Kyne's Wind set from Kyne's Aegis, I recommend that one the most because it procs the most often and it helps you keep topped off. The other one that's out now is from the new trial Ossian Cage, the Recovery Convergence. This one has a lot of recoveries tied to it, but you can only activate it once every 20 seconds because it's tied to a synergy. So that's the problem with that. You're only going to be able to proc this once every 20 seconds. Another one here is Rock Grove, the Stone Talker's Oath. This one you can only proc every 10 seconds. It is a really good set, but I like the idea of being able to proc every every 6 seconds because this has a 6 second cooldown, and it pretty much is easy to run right with Spell Power Cure. If you don't like this, then I would suggest popping on the Stone Talker's Oath is probably the next best thing. It's a little bit more convoluted to use because you have to remember to heavy attack every 10 seconds. So you're kind of stepping back into that Rojo type of run. If you're used to heavy attacking because you were a Rojo healer, then this might not be that big of a step away from what you're used to doing because you can back bar this if you wanted to, just like you would Rojo. You're just going to have to heavy attack more often. Rojo, you only heavy attack every 22 seconds, where this one, you'd have to do it at least every 10 to keep the uptime up 100%. So Kyne's Wind, I think, is the easiest to run because all you have to do is overheal your your allies there, and then you're doing that anyway with Spell Power Cure, so that's why I think those pair well. So with Spell Power Cure, you're getting the Major Courage. With Kyne's Aegis, you're getting the recoveries. The other healer setup I recommend is to have Zoran's Masterpiece. This will give everybody more maximum stats. This kind of ties into why I don't recommend running Warhorn. This will help uh, recuperate some of that loss from having Warhorn up. Warhorn gives you essentially 2% more damage from your extra maximum stats. This one is basically half of that. It'll give you 1% of your resources, and that 1667 pretty much equates to about 5%. So instead of having Warhorn fluctuate, or where you have an instance where maybe people double Warhorn, that happens a lot, I know. This will be up 100% of the time. It's an easy set to run. You don't have to proc it. You just make sure that it's on active all the time. You don't want to single bar this set. And then there's a flex spot there to run with that, either Powerful Assault or I recommend from the base game dungeon, Wayrest Sewers, I recommend the Combat Physician because it gives you a shield with when you critically strike with your healing. If you pair that with the blind from the dungeon Bedlam Veil, this will also critically strike. So you're going to give your group shielding and maximum stats, while the other healer gives your team major courage and resources. Then from your tank setup team that I like to run, um, starting off with the 2 trial sets, Lucent Echoes is an absolute must. This is going to make it easy to get your group to 125% critical damage at all times without using Warhorn, Minor Brittle, any of that stuff. I've made a video on this. I'm not going to cover that. Go watch it if you're interested. I have covered an easy way how you can get 125% critical damage at all times with no drop off. Easy. Check it out. It's on my channel into the trials folder. The other trials gear for the other tank that I recommend is Pearlescent Ward. This is going to give your group defense if somebody dies and flat weapon damage that does not drop off while everybody's alive. You get 180 weapon and spell damage. The 2 sets that I pair with that, one of them is controversial to some, but it's, in my opinion, not a waste. This allows your tanks to pick any skill line in the game that they want to tank with without having to use the Winter's Embrace skill line. I do not like that skill line. I did a video on this channel that was almost an hour long. I've had several people argue in comments with me about this is a waste of a 5-piece set. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. Tanking has changed in terms of what sets are valuable anymore. If you take a look, for example, at the Powerful Assault set, this skill that you have to run in most cases is a stamina skill that you're going to have to proc 2 times, and you're going to have to be within 12 meters. It's right there on the screen. A lot of people forget this. You have to be within 12 meters of your group. Otherwise, it will not proc. So let me just check to see, do I have the Spalder of Ruin on me? Yes, I do. Okay, first I have to take off the Pale Order Ring here because that is a mythic. And I will put on the Spalder of Ruin. And because why I do this is because the Spalder of Ruin ring has a 12-meter ring. So this will give you an easy idea of how close your team has to be. So I've heard people say you can wear this or wear the Powerful Assault on your main tank. Well, let's pretend this guy right here is Zamaja in Cloud Rest. She's got a long tail coming out the back end of her, and you're tanking. Look at how close that ring is. There's not a whole lot of people, even if you stack right on the tail, and you're going to continue to dodge mechanics and stay alive and manage your resources and all of that, and stay in within 12 meters of your group. It's just convoluted and messy. I don't recommend you do it unless you are extremely experienced and you really, really have your head on straight in terms of all of that. But it's not just about you, it's about your group too. They need to know that they need to stay within 12 meters of you if you're going to run that as a main tank. So I don't recommend that because you're running all over the place. It's just not going to happen in most fights. I would recommend running it in your group on an off healer or a support DPS if you want. That way that buff is in there. However, I will say that the Powerful Assault set is kind of like icing on the cake because it is not present on your trial dummy here when you parse. So all of these parse numbers that everybody's throwing out there, 150 plus whatnot, they're not including Pearlescent Ward, or Powerful Assault. So as long as we provide the buffs that are present when you parse, as well as keeping them alive and having resources, then bringing in things like the Spalder of Ruin, Powerful Assault, Pearlescent Ward, those are all extra that are going to help your team hit even harder. Now, what I will tell you is because the DPS now are hitting so much harder, and it's so much easier for just novice players to get well over 100,000 DPS. I, for example, was parsing before this video started, and I accidentally did it with the Pale Order Ring on, as you could see. I wasn't paying attention, and I still hit over 100,000. I got about 106, I believe it was. So because that is such an easy thing for DPS to hit now, it's become more vital to keep your DPS alive, because if one of those DPS dies, that's 150,000 DPS in the toilet. And that's not all. If you're in a coordinated group, one of your other DPS is going to have to stop DPSing and resurrect that dead DPS. So not only is it 150,000 DPS in the toilet, it's 300. So you are darn near 3 DPS worth of damage back from before subclassing down, because your DPS are dead, and you're focusing on trying to keep all of these sets in your group, when really, if you focus more on keeping them alive, shielded, and topped off on resources, you're probably going to have a much faster trial, because with 6 or 8 DPS that are doing 100,000 DPS, staying alive the entire time, you're going to have a melt comparative to, okay, we tried to bury the needle on damage a little bit harder, and we have deaths here and there, here and there, here and there. It's going to stagger. So I would recommend trying to get some defensive sets into your team so that you can keep your team alive. I have builds on my website, or excuse me, not my website, my YouTube channel, covering each role. The main tank uses Glacial Echoes and the set from Coral Airy Glacial Guardian. This will increase your group's status effect chance by 200%. I have a video on this also on its own. But I wanted to cover this stuff because it's important that people start understanding what has changed about builds. Yes, your damage has gone through the roof, but you have also lost quite a bit in recoveries and resistances here that needs to be addressed also, because if you're just a glass cannon and nobody is kind of watching those categories, your team is gonna suffer quite a bit. So make sure you keep those resources in group with at least a recovery set of some kind somewhere on your support team. The other thing is, if this gets even more vital, if you're going to have your DPS run the banner skill, this is especially draining and difficult to run. If you're going to have your DPS run this, it is almost an absolute must that you have at least one support having some recoveries involved in the team, because they're likely not going to be able to sustain having the banner on and having to flail now that they changed the class mastery script for the Arcanist, now that it does not give the free crux like it used to. So keep that in mind. Trying to remember everything I wanted to talk about this. I think I've covered most of it. The biggest thing is, if you bring everything that's on your trial dummy here and what you get when you hit it, and you make sure you start with that, basically figure out, okay, are we at 100% penetration? That's 18,200 penetration. I've covered that as well in a video. Just make sure you check that out. I'll link these in the description when I get it uploaded. but penetration, critical damage, and then look at shielding and recoveries and resistances. If you have your healer running Zans from Scrivener's Hall, that's going to give 4,272 armor. I think it's actually higher than that when it's golded out. Then you have Major Resolve from what I like to run on the off tank, which is from Frost Vault, and that is Mighty Glacier. Very easy to run. I've done a video on this. And then you've got Minor Resolve from either Combat Prayer, or you can make a scribing skill to provide it as well. Also, the Arcanist Minor Resolve can be given to the group as well. But if you get your team set up like I do, for example, the resistances when you get them fully buffed up is, I believe I calculated right around 30,000, and you have shields on them, and they're getting every buff in the game pretty much, with the exception of possibly Powerful Assault being flexed in or out depending on what trial you're running. If you need extra shielding, you could use the Combat Physician, or if you're running something simple, then you could probably ditch this and put Powerful Assault in its place on the off healer, just for an example there. But again, I've made a ton of videos on this in my trials team folder, and I just wanted to kind of do an overall general arc of what has changed for trials groups and what needs to be focused on, because the damage right now is incredibly high. So it has become even more important to keep everybody alive because of that. This right here and this right here is where most DPS are going to suffer, because they're not running the healing and tanking skill lines anymore. They're just loading full on into damage. So support needs to help them out in these categories right here in order for them to keep killing and being able to stay full up and being able to cast their spells and do damage. But I'm going to end the video on that note right there. Once again, I want to highlight my music folder that's on my channel, my playlist for my original ESO songs. I've added 3 songs this week. One of them was the Shield of the North, the tribute to Kyne's Aegis. Also had the Steel and Coin, the tribute to Fighters Guild, which was requested by one of my subscribers. Thank you again to the person who did that. And then I also had another song I'm forgetting off the top of my head now. I believe it was, I don't remember it. Not important. Check out that folder if you are interested in those. Those are original songs that I created with AI programs. The third song was from Ice Reach, Blood, uh, Bloodstained Spiral. I believe it's what it's called. It's late for me. Been a long day. But thank you for watching. I'm going to end the video there because I'm having trouble talking. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, check out my channel. Go to my YouTube channel. Go down to the created playlists that I've made. Check those out and see if there's any other videos that are interesting to you. I have made well over 170 videos now, so I'm getting quite a large catalog of all different types of things. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.